So now I want to go over another part of working in the Illustrator interface using our rulers and guides. Using rulers and guides is like a good way of lining things up. So guides are just like other objects, and you can move these around in ways of lining things up, or like the name says, guiding certain parts of your objects. Before we can work with guides, we have to make sure that we have our rulers activated. So in order to activate the rulers, I'm going to hit Command and R. And you can see when I did that, I now have up here in the upper left, right below my File tabs, I have a ruler that's running across the top, and then also a ruler that's running right next to my toolbar. The other way we can access the rulers is by going to View, going down to Rulers, and we can either show or hide the rulers. So now we know how to open up our rulers. Now we can actually make guides. So to make a guide, all I have to do is click on the ruler, either on the left or top side. I'm going to click and start to drag, and I'm going to get a faint dotted line. This is essentially our ruler. Now for our first kind of practice with rulers, we're going to try to make a nice 1 inch by 1 inch square. So I'm going to line that up right here along the template. Now just know that if I hold down on the Shift key, it's going to lock into place. So if you look right up here in the ruler, it's kind of locking to each one of these 1/8 of an inch tick marks. So I'm going to go ahead and release that Shift key and just place it right here, right next to the template square. I'll go ahead and move back down. So I made a guide that goes on vertical from up and down. If I need to make a guide that goes left to right, then I'm going to pull a guide from the top ruler, and I'm going to come down right here. Now how do we make this exactly 1 inch by 1 inch? I've narrowed down where my corner is, but I still need to know the width and the height of this. Well, that's when we can change the origin point of the ruler. So by default, when you create a file, the origin point is usually the top left edge of your artboard, but you can change that. So if I come over here and I hover inside the space where the two rulers meet, this is where we can change the origin point. I'm going to click and hold down, and I'm going to drag this origin point so that it's right here along the two guides, and then I can release. Another way to ensure that we are snapping to that exact intersection is to turn on the snap command. So if I come up to View and I come down all the way to here, I'm going to activate some of my snap options. So in this case, I want to do snap to point. And this is essentially going to snap to anywhere there's an intersection or a point. So I'll go ahead and do that again. I'll take the origin point and drag it, and you can see it snaps right into place. So now if I look up here in my ruler guide, now I can actually see I have 0 here on the x-axis, and I also have 0 here on the y-axis, so going up and down. Now it's going to be easier to make the exact guides for this 1 inch by 1 inch square. So I'll come back to my ruler guides. I'll click and drag from the rulers. This time I'll hold down on the Shift key, and that way it snaps to those exact marks along the ruler. So I'll make sure it snaps onto that 1 inch mark and release. And then I'll go ahead and pull one down from here. Hold down on the Shift key and snap it to 1 inch on there. Now I'll come over to my rectangle tool. I'll go ahead and turn off the fill. And since I'm using snap to point, when I use my rectangle tool, it's going to automatically snap to the intersections on those rulers. And so I should have a perfect 1 inch by 1 inch square. I can even test the length of this square. So if I go ahead and click on that square with my black arrow tool, I can come right over here to my tool panel, look for where it says eyedropper tool. I'm going to click and hold down and look for the measure tool. This is a tool that allows you to measure objects to see what kind of dimensions they have. And so I'm going to go ahead and hover right on that part of the square. I'm going to click and drag while holding down on my Shift key to the other side. And I can see right here, it's in my info panel. I'm looking at the W for the width, and it is 1 inch, 0.00002, so that's pretty much 1 inch. I could measure along the height and see that this is also 1 inch. Okay, I'll go ahead and go back to my black arrow with the V key, and I'll close this panel, and I will go ahead and make one more 1 inch by 1 inch guide. So I'll just find this first point. I know that from here to here is 1 inch. I'll reset my origin point, okay, and it snaps to that intersection, and now I can hold down on the shift key and find that other inch. Now I'll go ahead and use my ellipse tool, and I'll find the center, and I can draw an ellipse. And since I have snap to point, as I get close to these guides, it snaps onto those guidelines. I'll release the mouse, release the keys, and now I have a 1 inch by 1 inch circle. Let's go ahead and play around with actually making a guide from another object. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my my rectangle tool. I'll bring down the stroke because I don't need a 10-point stroke right now. I'll go back to 2. And what I'm looking to do is make a series of rectangles that lie along the shape of a square. So this is where I want my shapes to fall onto. So I can go ahead and turn this object into a guide. So I'm going to keep that object selected. I'm going to go up to View, Guides, and Make Guides. And now you can see that square has turned into that light cyan colored guide. So now I could come over here, I could grab my rectangle tool. I'll go ahead and switch the stroke and fill, and I'll get on the edge of that guide and draw a rectangle. So now I can copy this and snap it to the other side, or I'll make another copy. This time I will rotate while holding down on the shift key. And now I've rotated it 90 degrees. I'll go ahead and snap that into place. I'll hold down on my Alt key one more time, hold down on the shift key, and I'll click and drag that. So we can do the same thing one more time. Okay, this time I'm going to do it with a circle. So I'll hit the L key to activate my circle or ellipse tool. I'll find the center, hold down on the Alt key, hold down on Shift. And it doesn't matter if it is a stroke or a fill. Just for ease of looking at this, I'll change it to a stroke with a crossed out fill. Then I'll go up to View, Guides, and Make Guides. Let's say I made this a guide, but then I decided that I want to turn it back into a shape. Let's say I need to use it. Well, look, I can't select my guides right now. Okay, that's because the guides by default are locked. So whenever we need to modify our guides, we need to release them, or we need to unlock them. There's a couple ways we can do that. We can go up here to the View menu, go to Guides, and Unlock Guides. But my favorite way is just right-clicking without anything selected, and I'll go to Unlock Guides. So now if I do a marquee selection, I can actually select the guide, and now I can move it around as though it's an object. I'll just assume that I made this guide, but now I want to change it back to an object. I'm going to go ahead with this guide selected and right-click, and I'm going to go down here to Release Guides. Okay, and now that changes it back into a shape again. So that's how you can change a shape into a guide and then change that guide back into a shape. I'll go ahead and keep this as a shape and use my ellipse tool. And using the smart guides, I'm going to find each anchor point. There it says anchor. I'll hold down on the Alt key, hold down on Shift, make a circle, Shift X, and now I can copy this. So I'll hold down on my Alt key, hold down on my Shift key, and I'll line that up. So it's going to intersect. Hold down on the Alt key again. And right now I'm using these smart guides to find those intersections. We can also toggle on the visibility for our guides. So if I'm working and let's say I don't want all these guidelines in the way, I can toggle on and off their visibility. So if I hold Control and then hit the semicolon key, I can toggle those off and on. I can also come up to the View menu, go to Guides, and go to Hide Guides. Sometimes when you're working, you need to just clear the guides all the way. Making sure that all our guides are on one layer, I'm going to go to View and Guides, Clear Guides. And that gets rid of all the guides that are on that layer.